Yeah.
gone.
I just would love for,
We'll have a conversation.
we're still sorting out logistics. It's going to be awesome.
This is the intro.
My name's Eddie O'Neill. I'm Director of Product Management for Facebook's developer platforms. What that means is the team that I support is responsible for a lot of the kind of core tools and systems that you use, some of the APIs and platform products from the company that you also use, and then we work with teams across the company on platforms of everything from Messenger and Instagram and ads and pages, and then all of the things on the kind of consumer app and website side of the spectrum that I think we're going to spend a little less time talking about here. Thank you for being here with us. I think you are the lucky group that got in. Apparently there's a long line outside. It's great to have a packed house. What we're going to talk about today is we have an excellent panel of people in our ecosystem whose companies support messaging and SMB and ad tech and marketing and all these other things that we do to help businesses connect with customers, connect with people across Facebook's family of apps. My background, so I've been at Facebook for about 8 years, all on our developer platform. A lot of my past F8s have been spent in consumer products. I'm spending more time on this side of the work that we do now. Prior to Facebook, my background is actually in this space. So a lot of enterprise software and B2B and things like that over the last almost 20 years. So this is a topic that's like near and dear to my heart. And I'm really excited to be here with a group of people who represent a lot of the platforms and products that businesses use to be on the family. The way this is going to go today is we have a set of questions that I think match up with the expectations you have for some of the things we're going to talk about here. I'd like to give each of the panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves, talk about the businesses that they support, and then we want to come back and actually get to know you quickly so we can tailor a lot of the conversation we're going to have over the next 45 minutes to what we learn about you with some questions we'll ask of the folks in the room. So Andrew, I'll let you go ahead and get started.
Thanks, Ed. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Andrew Lindsay. I am the VP of Business and Corporate Development at HubSpot. I noticed on some of the materials it has a slightly different title. Not lucky enough to work in marketing, lead partnerships, including partnerships obviously with Facebook, one of the most important ones that we have, all of our acquisitions and all of our investments as well. HubSpot is a small and medium-sized business focused platform focusing on helping our customers with their marketing, sales, and service needs. We help companies grow better by having a platform by which they can better integrate and better work with their customers. And what that means is we have 3 hubs in each of those areas, and we also have a customer relationship management software that underpins it all. And that's critical to the partnership that we have with Facebook because it allows us to provide additional context and personalization for the interactions that our customers have with Facebook and with their advertising products. I've been at HubSpot for a little over a year. Prior to that, I was at a company called Jawbone for several years, and prior to that, I was in the consulting world and banking world.
Great.
My name is Vince Lynch. I'm the CEO of Ivy.ai and the AI platform. We enable non-technical business people to use machine learning to better serve their customers. We have a sharp focus on conversational commerce and customer care. And we're really fortunate we get to work with some of the largest companies in the world, including Netflix, Toyota, Telefonica, Capital One, and also over 100,000 SMBs to use AI themselves to help them with their businesses.
Thanks. Hi, great to be here. My name is Lauren Stevens. I'm from Spirable, VP of Marketing. So Spirable is a personalized video at scale platform. So we help some of the largest brands in the world, from Unilever to Vodafone to Johnson & Johnson, and also many SMBs, to easily create and optimize and scale video advertising across Facebook placements with Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger. So this is creating really highly targeted, meaningful ads at scale across those platforms.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Hossein. I'm a product lead at Shopify. Shopify powers over 800,000 entrepreneurs and businesses around the world, and I work on the multi-channel team where I get to work with Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, among other properties, to help our merchants sell through those platforms, but manage their businesses within Shopify.
And hi, I'm Tuomo Rekki, founder and CTO from Smartly.io. So Smartly is kind of a full platform for ad buying and creative automation. So we work with a lot of like digital natives, Ubers, Airbnbs, and Spotifys of the world, and kind of handling everything from like campaign creation to optimization and dynamic creatives and insights and everything in the life cycle of running your Facebook ads.
So now you know us a little bit. Help us get to know you a little bit. So I'm going to ask a few questions. I'd love for folks to raise their hands if these things apply to you. How many of you are developers today? Okay, a good chunk. How many of the rest of you are users of the types of products that the panelists on the stage represent today? Interesting. Cool. And how many of you are what you would consider a startup? Okay. And how many of you are what you would consider a large company? It's probably a bit of the inverse. Yeah, okay. Anything y'all are curious about that would help you here?
Any agencies here? Okay.
Okay. Awesome. That's a good mix. Interesting, diverse audience. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to ask a handful of questions, and I think the idea here is that panelists we're going to kind of talk to you, and they'll talk a little amongst themselves, and I'll push on some things, and so on and so on. We don't have Q&A planned, so this is largely going to be us kind of talking to you here. Let's start with just a basic question. What are some of the customer pain points you solve on a regular basis?
I can take that first.
Lauren, do you want to start?
For us, it's scale and automation. So we're a video advertising platform. So being able to create hundreds or thousands of ads is near impossible without technology. So that's some of the major pain points that we solve, and the way that we do that is through taking live contextual data and modular creative assets and putting that into a self-serve platform, which then automatically generates hundreds or thousands of ads based off that one template. So we're really helping these customers be more reactive, be more personalized, and be more in the moment based on the customers that they're targeting across Facebook, and we can push that instantly through the API. So it's really helping customers connect with their customers in a better way.
Yeah, there's a few that HubSpot focuses on. Two I'll call out. One is ease of use for advertising, and the other is tracking. For ease of use, being an SMB marketer today, it's both extremely difficult in that there's an incredible plethora of new products to use, new features, new platforms. And if you're in a small company, let's say you're a 20-person company, there may be a couple marketers, you're using some of the same tools that a Fortune 500 company is using, right? Some of these people in the audience, I imagine some of you are using some of these tools, and keeping track of them can be quite challenging. And HubSpot helps that SMB marketer have one place to go, whether it's Facebook or another platform, it's one product or slightly others, to be able to manage their marketing. So they can have one common interface despite having a wide range of different applications to be able to reach their customers. So that's one ease of use, having that common interface. The second is because HubSpot has a platform where we have both the CMS and a content management system for managing the website and a CRM, we're able to track customers for our businesses through the entire cycle. So we can help a customer track when someone's clicked on an ad, take them to their website, what they've done at that website, walk them through the entire marketing funnel into a sale, and ultimately when they start to transact and generate revenue. We can walk them through that entire process, so then they can have the reporting and they can have the accountability, so they can start seeing the ROI of their spend. So it's both the interface as well as that track, and those are two that HubSpot that focus on as well.
Yeah, for Shopify, our merchants, Challenges they face are building a brand that connects with the right audience and then finding the right place to market and sell. It's really daunting when you're a new merchant and you're starting your business, you figured out your product, but then you have to figure out where to sell it, how much to price it for, your inventory, your fulfillment, your shipping. So we're trying to make all of those things much easier. On the multi-channel team, that's why we partner with on so many different properties like Facebook and Instagram and Messenger, and allow merchants to choose like where they want to sell organically and through ads.
I think in our performance client base, I would say that there are like 3 different areas, quite simple things, but kind of getting more performance all the time, keeping your CPA and ROI levels on a good level. And then of course, like always spending less time on managing those. Like you don't need to have a full team of like 10 plus people to manage all the performance channels. So always kind of like trying to automate things as well. And then the last thing is like this ecosystem moves so fast that you're constantly like testing new ad formats and new channels, and you just have to keep up there.
So we're slightly different from all these companies in that we focus on language understanding. So we can actually exist as kind of an AI layer that sits on top of a lot of these platforms, where we help companies really get the information they need to get to their customer really easily. So the customer can just say, I need this thing, I want to fix this problem that I'm having, and they can get that information from the business automatically. Or they can say, I want to purchase this thing through this website, how can I do it? And it can get them the thing they want to purchase just by them saying, I want red shoes with patent leather and leather stuff. I don't know. Vegan leather. Let's do that.
A couple of you mentioned something that I think is an interesting topic for us to sort of pause here and dig in on a little bit, and it's the AI machine learning angle. It seems like that's something that has sort of is affecting, and I'm curious if you think this is like early stage or mid stage, but is affecting the industry and how you think about buying ads and so on and so on. Like, can you talk a little bit go a little bit deeper on the AI and machine learning angle and like how you see that impacting your customers?
I can maybe get started. So definitely on the optimization side, like AI has been around for quite a long time, like kind of doing all those bidding decisions and budgeting decisions. But of course, like Facebook is taking a much bigger role nowadays, like handling those decisions. But where it's like super interesting nowadays is like how can we use AI for creatives? Like how can we take all the assets and kind of with AI build all kinds of different variations of the creative, and that's the biggest lever that we can use in the future.
Yeah, I'll add to that actually. Yeah, for us, it's, it used to be about bid and budget optimization, but now it's very much about, how do we optimize at the creative level? So some big brands that we're working with in the CPG space are doing this already. You're looking at the creative, different times, what's working, what's not, and then you can just switch out. And the reason for that is because the creative is now 100% modular. It's all customizable. If you think back into the past, how video was created, you may go back and forward with an agency, it comes back, that could take a few days. But right now, you can edit the template immediately and push that live. So you're able to be much more reactive to what's going on, and you're able to tell the right story at the right time for that audience. On the AI perspective, we're really early doors in this, but and there's lots more to do. But eventually, and we've got technology building now where it's learning what the best creative is. So eventually, we'll be able to automatically swap out what the best creative is at the right time. So that will be an interesting future.
One other element is there's what's the best creative, and it's what's the best creative at the right time for that person. When should they be receiving it? When are they going to be receptive? And that's different for each individual, and that is very much, for us, AI driven, whether it's based on email or it's based on some kind of other type of format. AI is an important piece of that, so it's very similar.
I think that's the really beautiful thing about AI is it kind of creates this one-to-one environment between whoever's sending out the information and whoever's receiving it. And then it's tailored to them based on how they are like other people that are engaging with the content. So just everything becomes a lot more relevant. So you don't have as many bad ads as you used to have previously, and you don't have as many overwritten or poorly written messages that are going from businesses to their customers. Because you can actually test and learn in the live environment and do that without the risk of something going wrong, because it's within a contained set of things that you're willing to say.
For sure. Yeah, I see all these AI tools, and what we're really trying to do is just demystify them for the smaller merchants, because they see them, but they don't know how to utilize them. And so by creating ways that they can automatically connect to these tools and just experiment quickly and easily, I think that's the best way to get these smaller merchants to benefit from these AI tools.
You're all largely agreeing with each other.
This is terrible. We need some drama.
Yeah, some of the smart guidance I was given before we came on stage here was find a way to disagree. So let me see if I can like frame up something that you might disagree about.
Here it comes.
Are we early stage, mid stage, or late stage on this? I assume nobody's going to say we're late stage on this, but like where in the curve do you think we are in terms of applying machine learning and AI to some of these kinds of questions that you tackle for your customers?
The froth cycle or the actual technical cycle?
I mean, both potentially. I mean, you've got a good kind of view into that just with the type of work that you do, but I think both of those are potentially interesting.
I think froth is peak froth. It's getting really frothy. Like people are throwing AI at everything now. It's like everything is AI. It's like it's a book company that's AI. It's paper that's really well divined by AI. But I think that from a technical point of view, I think we're really, really early still. I think we're just scratching the surface of where it's going to go. It's miles away. If every 6 months it's growing incredibly, and the value that we're able to pull out of these AI models is constantly growing and becoming more useful as we kind of better learn how it changes us and how we think as people. I think that's this really nice thing that happens with AI is the AI gets smarter, but the people using the tools get smarter as well. And it's like that crossover and that kind of co-learning is going to continue to push it up and I think make it grow beyond where we could even imagine.
Totally agree, but it's developing fast, like all the open source libraries around this, like there are so many use cases that we can tap into and maybe use it in the performance marketing and creative and all those different areas as well. But today's use cases are still quite simple, I would say.
So far we're all early.
Hey, I want to disagree, but I can't. I completely agree with you guys. It's too bad.
Anything else?
No,
I think we all agree.
Yeah,
Darn.
All pretty early. Okay. Another thing that you touched on while we were kind of doing a little bit of the deep dive into AI, and maybe we'll come back to that, but was the SMB. Like obviously the customers that you serve, and I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about this, especially since the audience seems like there's quite a few people out here that like use these products. The customers that you serve range from Fortune 100 to like microsellers in the long tail. How does the feedback that you hear from your customers differ between those two like very extreme ends of a spectrum? How do you think about the nature of the products you build and those two extreme ends of the spectrum? And like what's the nature of the kind of feedback you get and how does that influence the way you think about evolving your products?
Yeah, for us, actually this year we developed a new solution for SMBs. Really a lot of the challenges are still the same. It's how to easily create videos in a matter of minutes and then scale that across channel. But really for the smaller businesses, they need to be much more reactive. They want a more lightweight solution. There's maybe not as many audiences and targeting that they're doing. A Unilever obviously is targeting millions of different people across the globe, whereas an SMB it would maybe be much more localized. So the functionality that we built into the platform is aligned to a company that wants to do something really quickly, really reactively. They can test and learn, and then they can sort of move on and optimize. So for us, it's just lightweight. It's focused on one or two simple sort of targeting techniques that we know works, and that just gets them to be able to get video out very quickly. Video can be hard. It's expensive. It's time consuming. So we really want to just make that as easy as possible for people to get video up, get stories up, and not sort of shy away from doing that because it seems too many barriers. So.
The feedback I get from small and medium businesses is that it's really hard and complicated. So I work with and mentor small businesses, and one of them are these two amazing moms in Toronto, and they have been wholesale selling jewelry for 20 years, but now they wanted to create a direct-to-consumer brand for themselves. And as we were working together, I got to just feel their pain points because they were building their brand. Now they're like, I have a site, but how do I get people to come to my site? How many ads do I make? How much should I spend on each ad? Did I use the right audience? But maybe it was the wrong audience at the right time, the right audience at the wrong time. And so it's just really, really complex. And I think that's the feedback that I hear. And that's what I keep thinking about when we're building features. Like, how do I simplify it for those two moms? Like, they don't understand ad tech, but they do understand that they want an audience. They can make a beautiful product. They just need that help bridging the gap.
I would say that on the skill level, like there might be even like some very small SMB clients that are very advanced and they know what they need to do and are on the same level as kind of the the big digital natives. But then again, like resource-wise, like they don't necessarily have their own creative teams or data science teams or developing resources to build tools for marketing. So that's where maybe kind of the SMB folks differ from our bigger clients.
Yeah. And the other important piece that I focused on with SMBs is often it's the same person working across multiple different products and maybe in multiple different functions and at the equivalent of a larger company. And that person is looking for a level of integration across their stack that's extremely important for their efficiency. So if they're using HubSpot, they want it to integrate not just with Facebook, but also with Shopify, for example. Or they wanted their lead ads to sync in with their CRM, right? So these are the kind of integrations that they need in order to be able to manage their stack really efficiently, especially on the SMB side, but important everywhere, but especially on that early stage, smaller business leader.
I think that's really interesting when you have a small business and you have maybe 3 or 4 people working there or 2 people working there, and one of the person's jobs is to do operational stuff. And they're doing all these things and their whole role is ops. So when you think about automation, sometimes like, well, that's my job. That's automating part of my workflow. And if it's part of their day-to-day basis, they have to change structurally the way they think about their business in order to integrate automation so that the person who's doing the ops is something to fill in their schedule. Obviously, usually they're really busy anyway, but it's kind of finding that fine balance where the SMB is comfortable enough with the way their business is running to think strategically about automating different segments of their workflow, and then having that be someone that's really close to them in the community that's kind of changing the role or the way that they think about the role.
What I'm not hearing is that I'm not hearing a huge difference between supporting a Fortune 100 and supporting a SMB. Is that a fair characterization? Or do you kind of think about and plan your roadmaps just sort of with the union of all of that feedback? Or do you actually kind of tend to think about building more specialized products to serve those different markets? Because I assume it's a little bit different when you're working with an SMB or a smaller seller or whatever, where one person wears multiple hats, and so maybe they're using a tool that brings a lot of those things together, where when you're working with a larger organization where you might have entire different sub-organizations inside a bigger company thinking about marketing versus product catalog or whatever, like you're using more specialized, maybe deeper tools. Do you think about that, or does it all end up kind of collapsing into the same sort of experience?
They're absolutely different segments. So on Shopify, there's like the solopreneurs, like Andrew mentioned. So it's a single person running their entire business and managing their personal life. So all of those things. But then there's the Gymsharks and the Kylies that are doing a ton of business, and their marketing needs are much more specialized. They're using different tools. And to his point, you have to be able to integrate those tools and use them seamlessly, but their needs are very different. So the level of advanced features that you would present to someone that's at a larger business and someone who's just starting and experimenting would be very different.
It's more of the life cycle of the client. Like, are they just getting started, or have they already used these platforms and tools for like 5 years or so?
Totally. The sales cycle changes drastically from one to the other. The care cycle, the amount of energy the larger company needs to deal with the fact that there's usually many more moving parts in relation to their stack.
Yeah, it's we have an annual conference, and it's a great opportunity for us to meet many of our customers. And I met a entrepreneur who runs a small flower shop in the Midwest, and she was telling me how she's starting to use advertising. She's thinking about it, and she knows she went on Facebook, but she hasn't done it before, and she's going online using some of HubSpot's tools to get educated about it. And much of her challenge was simple education. It was, what are the tools should she be using? How should she be using them? How much money should she be spending and experimenting with? Right? That's just a fundamentally different set of questions than some of the companies that Sabrina was talking about at the higher stage, right? And that's we have to develop our products and roll our products out and go to market with those products in a very different way, because the level of education, the level of sophistication for that user is just fundamentally different.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember some of this from my enterprise software days, and the differing nature in what customers expected from us. And then I think this is something that's just like fundamental. This is how old I am. Something that has fundamentally changed in the last 20 years, like how long it takes somebody to install software on premise and get a project worked through their IT department and do all of those things versus the time it takes to kind of start using the types of products that you build today, which kind of end up being a lot more just instantly self-serve. It's definitely something that has been an interesting change to watch. I want to shift gears a little bit, and we'll come back to this and talk about futures in a couple of minutes. But to sort of talk a little bit to some of the developers in the room, we had a conversation this morning, not this group, but another couple of us had a conversation this morning with some VCs, just to understand a little bit how businesses that fund other businesses think about kind of consumer products and business products and how that has potentially shifted over the last like 5 to 7 years. And one of the interesting things we heard this morning was that in the past, this particular person that we were talking with thought about a kind of 50-50 balance in sort of consumer products versus business products, but that the cycle's kind of coming back around and they're thinking more of a 60-40 balance of doing a lot more on kind of the enterprise and business side than necessarily the consumer side. Where I'm going with this is I'd love to understand a little bit of your journey and how each of you ended up in the roles that you have ended up in for people who are thinking about, kind of the enterprise and the business side of these kinds of products, given how much time we have spent over the last, kind of 10 years thinking about consumer product. And obviously, like, super important, this is just a different space. And so I'd love to kind of just get a little bit of storytelling around, kind of your experiences either founding or kind of going through your kind of career tracks as working in these types of companies.
I can maybe get started.
Yeah.
So when I went into the startup world, basically with an idea that let's build something with a cool team, like I didn't think about Facebook at all. Like that was 2010, and I just kind of like started to look into different interesting areas and talking to different clients, and that way kind of found out that there's challenges in like mobile attribution, thought about that idea, then went into like all the mobile ad networks, and then kind of gradually finding through client feedback that, like Facebook advertising is booming right now, and there are a lot of challenges around it, and then kind of pivoting the whole company that direction.
So I've been working in product for 10 years, and I was always focusing on mobile app development at startups for a number of years. And then that started narrowing into mobile messaging applications and getting people to communicate. And that gradually moved into my interest in conversational commerce. So that's how I ended up at Shopify, because they were starting to get into conversational commerce, and I joined the Messenger team where we were figuring out, like, how do we connect merchants and buyers over chat, and how do we get them to check out? And so that's something I'm really interested in. And then over time, my role at Shopify has evolved to other properties within Facebook, but then also on the ad side, because it really is a cycle. Like, you won't just be able to cold call somebody and start chatting with them or selling with them on any of these platforms. You may need an ad to show them what your brand is and your story is, and that really connects into that overall like buyer life cycle. And so that's kind of how I ended up here.
Yeah, for me, I've been in ad tech running marketing teams for the last 10 years, and I think it's really sort of a bit of spinning plates. I sit across product marketing, brand, lead gen, but I think it really gives you a bit of depth into, you have to be an expert in each of those areas and really understand what your clients are going through. And our clients span all sorts of different industries, different sizes. So it's, you have to really become an expert at everything. And I think that's what really intrigued me, especially in a fast-paced industry such as this, and working with partners like Facebook, where you've got to constantly keep up with what's going on. Personally, it's I've worked in different countries. I ran Asia Pacific marketing for another Facebook marketing partner called Kenshu. Worked in San Francisco and now back in London. But it's a lot of the challenges are the same. A lot of the pain points are the same in some sense, and it's really about sort of using that sort of breadth of knowledge to sort of bring that all together and help people advertise in a better way. So.
My journey into AI was a bit random. I was the creative director at Virgin in London when I was 25. And my friend went to work at the startup, and he's like, come over and you can do some consultancy work for us. And maybe like you can do this on the side because it's more of a digital play than a traditional media play where you work right now. And I went into the startup and I looked at the name on the wall and I thought, that's a really stupid name for a company. And then he showed me the product and I was just like, oh my God. And it was
in a good way.
I was like, oh my God, I'm dead. Like this thing is going to revolutionize our industry and my job is going to be gone, because they were doing the job of 100 people at the company I was at with 0 people with algorithms. And that was Spotify, and it was 2009. And it was crazy. So like from then on in, I just started trying to build my own AI stuff on the side, and it was really, really hard. And I thought like I was never going to be successful again, and I'm not really successful anymore. But it was a pretty harsh first few years. But now that everybody's embracing AI, it's great because you're able to get a lot done really quickly and actually make a big impact. And I'm slightly more successful than I was 4 years ago.
That's good. Glad to hear that.
I'm working on it.
My journey was I started much of my career in strategy consulting, working with big Fortune 500 companies as they thinking about their growth strategy, their go-to-market in new areas, new product entry, and I moved from that into consumer tech and consumer electronics and worked with Jawbone. And Jawbone was started out in the consumer space, but slowly moved into the enterprise space. It started moving more into the health side, started moving more into the insurance side, and it became clear that many industries now there's this convergence of consumer and enterprise. And that's certainly the case with HubSpot. When we look at the SMBs that we're serving, they're expecting to have an experience in HubSpot and with their marketing, with their sales, the same that they do with Instagram or with Messenger and Facebook. They're expecting that same ease of use. And so that's how we think about our UX. That's the bar that we have for ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why I came to HubSpot, because it's clear that if we're going to help small businesses be successful, we have to help them be successful the way they run their business, the same way they're successful, and how they're communicating with their communities and the world around them. So that was my path into HubSpot.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. One of the things that's interesting is that several of you, I think, have kind of come to this path not starting in business software, but like you ended up in this side of software. Some through kind of coming through the apps and the products for people side. And it's interesting how those two things feel like they're sort of starting to bleed back together again, especially when we bring in, I think a lot of times, like sometimes we talk a lot about ad tech, but when you start bringing in messaging and transactions and connecting with people in retail and commerce and that kind of thing. How do you, related to that, how do you think about the relationship between ads and marketing and messaging and commerce? It feels like all of that is sort of starting to kind of come together in a way that's different. So I'd love to just get your thoughts. Again, this may be one of those things where nobody disagrees, but I'd love to get your thoughts a little bit on how you see kind of all of that converging into a like omni-channel sort of experience for businesses.
I think it's quite experimental still today. Like people are maybe in different organizational teams, like trying, for example, messaging experiences and then click to messenger ads and all these different things. So these need to kind of come together and think together, like how can we build a unified experience. I think we're quite far away from that still.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, the way teams are structured. It's not anymore about optimizing a specific channel. You've got to look more holistically about, how are you optimizing the whole experience for the customer. I think, a good example for one of our clients actually, Captain Morgan ran a campaign across Facebook Messenger, and then sent people into a bar, and it was basically they created dynamic ads on Facebook Messenger, use location data to then send people to a specific bar based on their location. So if you're in London, the copy's reading, ahoy me London captains, get yourself down to the Dog and Duck for a free Captain Morgan and Coke, sends them to Facebook Messenger where they have a conversation with a chatbot, collects a bit of data, and then that gives them a free drink in a local bar. So this is a really good example of how all these different channels are working together to ultimately result in, I think it was a 9% uplift in sales and a 30% increase in engagement in afterwards. So it's really closing the loop on online and offline. I think it's still early doors, but there's definitely brands doing it and doing it well.
I think we're going to see direct-to-consumer brands thriving more and more brands like Kylie or Gymshark cutting out the middleman and really connecting with their buyers one-on-one. And so from that, I think social is going to move more into messaging. If I think of those two mompreneurs, I think they might run an ad at some point. That ad takes them into a social messaging app. They start talking to their potential buyer and designing the piece, like almost as though they're over a counter together talking about like how they want it to look, and then you actually check out, and then that order goes into Shopify, and then they fulfill it. Like the whole thing just kind of like connects into an entire system.
Yeah, we tend to think of it at HubSpot, many of our customers are B2B, we tend to think of it as an entire flywheel, and we think of our customers from the marketing to sales and to service side all being part of this integrated system, right? And historically, you thought of those as being somewhat disparate functions, and now they need to be very closely tied together because that's what the customer is expecting. The customer is expecting when they've shared some information with you in the early part of the sales process that you will have remembered that and you will use that when you're servicing them after they've purchased several months later, right? And so that experience has to be closely tied together in with your teams, with the tools that you're using. So we tend to think of this as being one continuous system as opposed to discrete ones, regardless of how the functions are set up. The customer doesn't really care how the organization is set up. What they care about is having this unified experience, and that's what they're expecting more and more. I think we're not entirely there yet, but in the very near future, that's going to be the baseline, and that's going to be the starting point for every business.
But this seems hard, right?
It's hard.
Like I think Lauren, you were talking about connecting online, offline. Andrew, you were talking about like these like complex flywheels. Like all of that makes sense. How much of that is painful for people to do today? Like it seems like there's a lot of work to like the ad and the creative and the targeting, and then get that connected into the location and the message. Like there's just a lot of moving parts and pieces. To what extent do you see automation and tooling and all of those things kind of simplifying this for businesses on the other side? Because it seems like a lot of people want to be able to do this, but this also just seems really hard to like coordinate all the moving pieces.
I think it seems hard, but I think, like you say, that's where technology comes into play. So with the Captain Morgan example, that was one creative template, and there's a data matrix of sorts that's feeding that's then creating all these different variations. Obviously, when people are responding, what location they're at, what bar they're at, all these different data points sort of feed into that. So I think it's educating brands and the industry on what's possible and the sort of how easy or not, as the case may be, that is. So it's easier than it looks.
Yeah. I think it's impossible without the technology, right? So if a company's trying to do this with spreadsheets, they're just never going to win, right? You need to have, Scott Brinker, our head of platform, puts out a marketing map every year. Most of you have probably seen it. The latest one has 7,000 different companies on it, right? This has grown from about 150 a few years ago. The key is, if you're using several of these 7,000, is making sure that they talk to each other so that your service is talking to your marketing, right? And if you're trying to do that based on spreadsheets with people across the hall from each other, that's not going to work. It has to be in some system of record somewhere that's tied to your system of engagement. Obviously, HubSpot, and I'll push it, we do that, right? And so a naked plug, that's the core of our business, because we think that ultimately that CRM level is what is necessary for companies to have that relationship, regardless of the size of the business, regardless if you're that flower entrepreneur in the Midwest, or if you're the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is using the product as well. That's the expectation for the customer, so you need to have the tools to match with it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you have where you have these skill sets internally in an enterprise in the different structures of the business, and they all have specific expertise where it enables them to work really well and to do the job that they're doing and solving problems that they're solving. And then you have information flow that's coming in that's being more democratized against all the different touch points with the customer. So really that layer of communicating through all those data points through to the enterprise leadership team is the sweet spot for getting that right. But because they they all have different needs that they're trying to service, and they all have different success metrics they're trying to hit. It's really kind of thinking about it strategically at that level as well. It's like, how can we think about where the business is going more holistically, as opposed to saying, we need to drive revenue, we need to lower costs here, and these two things aren't talking to each other, and how do we make sure that they are, in order to make that strategy really work across the whole thing and make the results really meaningful.
We've got 7 minutes left. I kind of want to ask the future question. And rather than asking you what big bets you're placing, because I assume that some of that is going to be pretty closely held, I'd love to ask what are the themes and trends that you think it's important for people to understand that are coming in the next 3 to 5 years? Whether it's themes and trends that like influence the products that you build, whether it's things that Facebook needs to be thinking about, whether it's things that you see kind of impacting your customers. Like what is coming in the next 3 to 5 years that you think you need to be paying attention to?
I think there is quite a big shift happening, especially in the creative industry. Like it used to be that traditional agencies built like maybe one video ad for TV, and then it was repurposed for social. I think like the new world is where, in a modular way, like you build a lot of different assets, you test those, you use automation to build a lot of different variations. I think that will change quite a lot of the industry as well, because it also goes to like the team structures and what kind of partners you work with, and how those teams and partners work together. What's the kind of the normal workflow, the weekly cycle of your organization? Do you get new ads from an agency, or should you constantly be producing and testing different things? I think that's something that we see at least like changing quite rapidly at the moment.
Yeah, I think the simplification of tools to develop creative, and then going back to, I think, that one-to-one relationship between brands and buyers, and I think that's going to be super important as there's more direct-to-consumer businesses. So being any tool that facilitates that communication and that almost recreates that experience of them coming into your store and you consulting them on the types of products they're going to buy, I think merchants and brands are really going to levitate towards those types of products.
Yeah, for us, it's using data in a way, especially with privacy, a huge issue.
Yeah.
Using data in a way that facilitates greater relevance without it being creepy. So I think there's a way up there of how to do that. One of the ways we see to do that is using contextual data. I think there's a time and place for first-party data. Obviously, if you give your birthday to a brand, you sort of expect a discount on your birthday. But I think contextual data could be weather, time of day, day of week, live sports scores, anything that you can feed in that just gives the ad relevance without it knowing, what color top you've got on, or what, the first party data that can be perceived as creepy. So I think using contextual data to create relevant ads will be a really huge thing to go forward.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that 5 years from now, I think that the shift happens more with the channels where people are consuming their information. And I think the traditional media companies that have been around a long time, I think are going to kind of slip more. And through that, you're going to have more context that's available to advertisers in the way they communicate with their customers, and then customers are going to demand better service through that. They're going to want to be able to get what they want more easily and be less patient than they are now, which is not very patient at all. So, kind of being able to say what you want and get what you want, and have the expectation that anyone you're going to give your money to or anyone you're going to spend your time with is going to be there for you and enable you to do exactly what you want when you want to do it. And the places that best facilitate that and the businesses that best enable that through their product delivery will be the ones that win.
Yeah, I think one of the big shifts is going to be a democratization of tools, right? Whether that's AI, which we talked about, which is fundamentally allowing companies to have better, faster decision making, or it's the democratization of outreach, right? What you're going to see is that it's no longer going to be about who has the greatest scale is going to ultimately win around a product. It's about who has the greatest set of relevant tools, who has the greatest stack behind them, and who has the best product, really. Because the ability to be found is going to change dramatically, because it's going to be the tailoring, the customization that we're seeing. We're just getting started with this. For a long time, HubSpot was focused around inbound only. And we said, we're not doing any real advertising because it felt interruptive, right? And that was the core of the business when the company was founded back in 2004. Over time, advertising has changed so dramatically. Advertising is no longer interruptive. It's about finding customers in a way when they're already engaged, where it's informative, and where it's enlightening, and sometimes where it's even entertaining. Right? And so it's about making sure that you can get to that customer in that way with a product that wins. It's not about having the biggest wallet and the biggest marketing spend and the biggest marketing budget.
Yeah, tooling seems like it's something that sort of cuts across everybody. Yeah. That having great tools, simplifying the tools, simplifying the workflows, like getting people in the software world, this is referred to as the pit of success, but like getting them to outcomes as quickly as possible seems pretty important. I think that's kind of all we have that we wanted to talk about. So I want to thank panelists. Thank you so much for spending your time up here today. Really appreciate you joining the conversation, and thanks the audience for being here. Enjoy the rest of F8.
Awesome.
Cool.